It was an eventful episode of the challenge. I think eventful is probably the right word. Eventful, controversial.
Yeah, I mean, for an episode that only had one challenge, that, trivia challenges are fun.
Yes.
They're cool, but I mean, it was right at the very end of the episode. It was a singular challenge. There wasn't like a challenge and then elimination. But for an episode that just had that, I mean, there's a pretty action-packed episode with a lot of talking points coming out. And yeah, I'm fired up. Normally I end up watching and then we record, but like in the moment right now, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah.
I'm kind of taken aback at the events of the episode. But let's start with introductions. I'm John Shidley Hill.
And as always, I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. Things start up exactly where they left off last week, which is Kaylee running to Nelson at the elimination after Brad and Kyle and Cam and Kaylee are eliminated, and tells Nelson that Brad was yelling at her the night before and kind of talking a little bit of shit about Nelson, but mainly just yelling at Kaylee. Yeah. And then Nelson has to go and defend his girl, his words, not mine. And I only had one question for you from this. Why is Nelson asking for Brad to spank him?
Yeah, that was the most awkwardly, weird way of defending your girlfriend's honor that I've ever seen. Now, I'm single. I do not currently have a girlfriend right now. But I do question that have I missed something in the time since I've had a girlfriend that, this is chivalry in 2018? Is this the way that you're supposed to defend your girlfriend's honor? It was just super weird. There's a security guy I don't know if it's a security guy or if it was a Hunter that's trying to stop Nelson as he continues to turn around and pull his pants down. It was just the weirdest thing ever. And I don't understand it. And him and Brad are just yelling at each other. It's a weird argument. And I mean, I don't even know what the Brad and Kaylee argument, first off, I don't even know what it was about. I don't even know what they were saying to each other. It didn't really seem to make much sense at the time and in the moment. Well, and so the fact that it turned into something after that, I'm kind of like, okay, that's just weird.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how to put this, but yelling at people is not great, but is Brad supposed to have just stood there and had Kaylee yell at him and Kyle? Yeah. Is he not? I don't know. It was just such a strong and strange reaction, inviting Brad to spank him. I just had to check in and make sure that it was weird for you too, because it was definitely a weird decision for Nelson to make. And also, normally I write off a lot of behavior based off of how drunk they are. They would not be drunk at this point, right? They would not be allowed to drink going into potentially a competition.
Elimination? No.
So Nelson's still
you're
cold
definitely
sober
not allowed to drink
when he is inviting this. Maybe Nelson's working through some issues. Who's to say?
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a precursor to the rest of the episode, though, right? That it would just be crazy argument after crazy argument, right?
And that the tensions are rising in the house. And I think a big part of it,
for sure,
and this is just a blanket statement, is that the tensions are rising on both sides. The Team Young Bucks and Lavender Ladies are stressing because they know with those two competitions that ended really in last week's episode that the numbers have swung back in Johnny Banana's favor. But I think Johnny Bananas personally is also wound tight because he sees the writing on the wall, and that although he's got numbers again, it's more of a cobbled together alliance, and that for season 33 and 34 and going forward, it's gonna always be an uphill climb for him. I think he's seeing which way the wind's blowing. Johnny Bananas does, however, love how things panned out for him. He loves that Cara Maria and Marie are back in the house, and that Natalie and Polly are in the house, period. There was an interesting scene which I really felt like was laying groundwork, and that was in the van to the Redemption House. Cam was chirping Brad and Kyle for losing to Natalie and Polly, and like it was really bothering Kyle. What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, Kyle wasn't having it, but you could tell like the emotions are high on both sides, right? So you can tell they're super upset and super taken back by what just happened. But also, if you go back to Paulie for a second, Paulie was thrown off by the fact, like he actually even said, "Wow, I haven't stood on this side in like a month and a half." And it hit me. I was like, "Whoa, it's been a month and a half that they've been in the Redemption House chilling? Like that is crazy." Right? Like, and I don't know if he's literally saying a month and a half, but the point is like it's been a while. Do you know what I mean? And so you could tell everybody's kind of taken aback by what happened because the whole game just flipped.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything just swung. And so everyone, Johnny Bananas was probably super nervous for sure because he had no numbers on his side anymore. And now at least he has some help. But if you're the other side of the house, you were in full control of everything, right? You were chilling. Everything was nice. It was just you guys were choosing which way was going to go down, and then the biggest decision you would have to make is basically, okay, well, what's the order that we're going to vote for each other? And then boom, things flip. So I can see why everyone's kind of flustered, but you're right, Cam did strike a nerve with Kyle. Kyle was super flustered, and I'm glad honestly that we didn't get back to the Redemption House because I don't really care to see them in the Redemption House. To be honest, like I have no interest in that at all. So I was happy that it went right back to seeing Natalie and Paulie get integrated back into the house, and Paulie, trying to find a room, or I guess he was getting the room by himself. Natalie acknowledging that her and Johnny were cool. I thought that was interesting because I kind of was like, wait, when did this happen? And she kind of explained, you know what? I kind of was over this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's it. Simple as that. And I thought, okay, fair enough. I mean, whatever.
We also see, I guess it's the next morning, Devin and Cory working out together, talking about their strategy. I gotta say, Devin is looking good. He's looking fit. In confessional, he says that
you seriously have a man crush on
100%.
It's like, as much as I love Natalie, you love Devin.
Yeah, probably. It's pretty close. Although, pause, let's talk about Natalie for a second. Her face got fucked up by that competition. Like, her chin looked rough.
It looked super fucked up. And it was so difficult. It was almost difficult to look at her, right? And, like, again, that's saying a lot because it's Natalie. And I was still kind of like, oh, no. Like, it was almost cringeworthy, right? Because you feel so bad for her because you know, like, how much that hurt. Like, it had to hurt, right? And so even when they showed the replay at the start of this episode of her just being tossed around in that ball, like, yeah, poor Johnny better go easy on her.
We should also point out that Marie had her knees all taped up. I don't know if you noticed that when they were doing, like, when TJ was doing his, like, you're going back to the Redemption House speech. Marie was also all bandaged up.
No, I did notice that, yeah. It was super crazy.
Anyway, Man Crush Monday Devin says in confessional that he's back on the show to make his dad proud because his dad loved the challenge, and his dad loved that he was on the challenge, and that he knows that his dad would want him to go back and to keep doing it and to win the whole damn thing. And then, of course, Cory says, classic line, that he's doing it for his daughter, Ryder. And everyone goes out for dinner, and it seems like people are getting along at the dinner, eating good food, which, we've heard from everyone. The food is...
Well, hold on. There's one point here that we skipped over on the Devin and Cory workout plan, right? That I think is super important. As they're working out, they're talking game strategy and, like, we got to figure out we kind of just got to figure out our place here, but most importantly, we just got to lay low. That's what they said their plan should be. Their plan should be to lay low. And then they proceed to do the exact opposite.
Yes.
Now, Proceed.
So everyone goes out for dinner, and before we get into the play-by-play of Pastagate, I do have to talk about the fact that Hunter talking about shrimp sounds like Bubba from Forrest Gump talking about shrimp. Did you notice that?
Hunter is a very interesting character. Hunter is a very interesting character, I will say.
I didn't even have any steak. I just had the prawns. They were so big. That was a bad attempt at a southern accent. My apologies.
It wasn't good. That was horrible.
They are in the vans heading back from the restaurant, and we don't see this. But apparently, someone sat on Cory's leftover pasta from the restaurant, and he shows Tony, like, oh man, someone sat on my pasta. And Tony takes it and throws it out the window. Which, I have to admit, I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, of course it's pretty funny. But if it was my pasta and I was looking forward to eating it, I might not think it's that funny. Also, I think a very important part to bring up in this is I think they're clearly inebriated at this point.
Oh, yeah, they are into the cups. You can tell by everything that goes on, everything that follows, they are clearly all drunk, like 100%.
Yeah. So if I'm out for a night, right, and I'm focused on, after your night out, you have a couple drinks, you're like, I'm hungry, I need some late night food. At that moment, there's nothing better than that late night food. So if someone messes with that, I'm going to be kind of upset. So I understand. Side note, Natalie. Oof, Natalie in that scene. Hi, Natalie. That's all.
So Devin, to his credit, immediately assesses the situation and can tell that Cory is getting heated. So as soon as they get out of the van, Devin is in Cory's ear, encouraging him to chill out, saying, hey, man, don't forget that you're doing this for your daughter. I'm here for my dad.
He's telling him, don't fuck with him.
Just let it go. Like,
don't fuck with him.
Let's get you some water. Let's chill out. Tony comes, and in a very drunken but kind gesture, puts his arm around Cory and offers to help him look for the pasta, which, again, kind of funny. But also, when like people have been drinking and one of them is angry and no longer screwing around, it's not the time to touch them. Even if you like go to hug, like it's going to go over badly.
Yeah.
That's Cory's headspace.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And again, I think it's very important to acknowledge that they're all drunk in this moment, right? Because that's when it's like, as you mentioned, one person's playing around, you think the other person's playing around, and then they're not playing around. Right?
Yeah. And so Cory does what people who are fans of professional wrestling would know as a Russian leg sweep.
Do you know what? I actually wrote that down because I remember from as a child, I watched wrestling. Obviously, I was a huge Hulk Hogan fan as a child, and then I grew up and then found out that he was extremely racist. But that's a story for another podcast. But anyway,
I mean, in fairness, we've discussed Hulk Hogan's racism on this podcast.
Yeah. I meant like another episode of the YouTube podcast.
Fair enough. So Cory,
but I was familiar with the Russian.
Okay, that's good, and sure. I feel very close to you right now. So Cory, it's sort of a leg sweep slam, and Tony goes down hard. Like, in all honesty, things could have been a lot worse for Tony. Like, I don't know if he tucked his chin to his chest quickly, if he just has a thick skull, but like, that was bad. That was on cobblestones. He could have fractured his skull.
Yeah.
He could have split his scalp open. He could be concussed. Like, it was bad. Yeah. It was a bad spill.
So here's the thing I didn't understand, right? And it led me to believe that they must have been drunk, because how on earth Nelson and Devin are standing right there and watching it, and they're like, oh no, he slipped, or it wasn't that serious, or whatever the excuses were that they were making, made no sense to me in the moment, other than they had to be drunk.
See, in Devin's defense, I agree. Nelson had, from what we could tell, a good view of what happened and should have known better. But if Tony has his arm around it, so it's on your right, like from the camera's view, you've got Cory. Then you have Tony putting his arm around Cory. And Devin, before the leg sweep, Devin is reacting and sort of grabbing Tony's hand and trying to like look at their front to say to Tony, like, hey man, like give Cory some space. So Devin's leaning forward and can't see the trip part of the maneuver, right? Like, because Devin's kind of in a line and leaning forward, right? I believe that Devin really couldn't see what happened, and also was drunk.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going with this, right? Because I think that in his mind, he just wanted to diffuse the situation. Plus, Cory's reaction, it wasn't like Cory reacted as if he did what he did. So I think that played a role into it as well. But still, for Devin to like hard set be like, hey, wait a second, like he slipped. Like, that was just kind of weird to me. And that kind of, Nelson's getting mad at Bananas, who obviously gets upset over what happened. But Nelson, I think Devin's reaction really amped up Bananas because, again, if you were watching what went on, you can clearly see what happens and the force in which, like, even if Tony does start to slip, you can see Cory, like, forcefully throw him on the ground, right? Like, even if momentum caught Tony and he starts to slip, you see Cory, like, throw him to the ground. So for Bananas to see that and then see Devin's reaction, I can see why Bananas was that hype. And then Nelson comes in saying Johnny's amping it up. But really, I would be just as amped as Johnny, too, in that situation. Because I saw what happened.
But my point is, I think Devin legitimately did not see at least the first half of that. So, like...
No. But I'm saying regardless of if he saw it or not, if I'm Bananas and I watched what happened and I'm being told they slipped, and I watched it happen and know that they didn't slip, right? And then being told that I instigated it, I'm going to be kind of hyped too.
Oh, yeah. At this moment, Bananas is in the right. The tricky part is Devin's in the right too. To the best of his knowledge, it was a slip. And... like, all of a sudden things have escalated, right? Like, Devin was just, like, 30 seconds ago talking to Cory, saying, like, hey, bro, chill. And Cory's like, yeah, I'm going to chill.
I know this sounds stupid, but he should have done a better job of, like, removing Cory from the situation. I know Cory's a grown-ass man, and we're talking about grown-ass men in this situation, but, like, literally he should have just taken him inside or, like, gotten Nelson and Hunter and, like... And this is a part where I'm sober right now, obviously, talking about, people's decision making when they're drunk. So obviously it's hindsight and easy for me to say. But the Young Buck crew has a history of messing up and doing stupid shit when they're drunk and ruining their shots at winning on this show. So with that knowledge, all of them, if you go to Nelson or if you go to Hunter and you're like, hey, man, let's get Cory out of here. We don't want anything to happen that we'll regret or that we can't take back or, like, should have been a lot more forceful in trying to remove Cory out of that situation.
I agree.
At the end of the day, like, is it Devin's fault? No. But I'm just saying, in that moment, he saw where it was going. We all could see where it was going. And, again, the history of it all, right? Like, yeah. This is just not
the other problem, of course, though, is Tony came over there. Like, you're right that Devin maybe could have done more to diffuse the situation, but it's not just that he has to keep an eye on Cory, but, like, Tony came over. And not that Tony did anything to deserve what happened to him, but...
No, I know what
you're
saying.
Like,
I know what you're
Cory,
saying. That's fair.
Devin's focused on Cory, and then suddenly Tony's on him. And... Devin's, did make a reach to be like, hey, man, like, give him some air. But by that point, Tony was on his ass.
No. Like, totally true. And I think that's why, in the end, both Tony and Cory get sent to the hotel for the night. which is what happens when people get into an altercation on the show. The producers put each of them separately in a hotel so that they can calm down, chill out, while the producers, I think, go over the footage and decide what they're going to do about the situation, right? So, but also it's like to get people out of the house so that they're not all drunk in the same house, production shuts down, maybe security's not around, and then something else happens, right? So, yeah, you're totally right, and that's why both of them get sent away. And this is not, like, things don't calm down after that. And in fact, it gets worse, because Devin is now talking to the rest of the house, right? And he is saying that Tony and Cory slipped on the pavement. And he's going really hard about this and, you know, in his explanation. And I want to give Sylvia a lot of credit here because she was smart in what she said to Joss in terms of, listen, this is not going to end right now. These two sides are still going to be going at it. Let's just stay out here, stay out of it, and let them take each other out. I thought that was the smartest move of the night.
Yeah.
And then came the dumbest move of the night, right?
Yes. I mean, yes.
The dumbest move of the night to me, and this, we haven't obviously gotten to how this ends, but obviously if you're listening to this, you watch the show, so you know how this ends. But I'm going to point to this moment as being the part where all of this fucks up, and if you're going to blame one person from the beginning, it's probably Nelson. Because the lights are off, Johnny Bananas and company are in their room. They're talking. In their room with the lights off, meaning they're about to go to bed. Nelson is standing outside of the room listening to their conversation. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Mind you, Bananas doesn't even say anything that bad.
No, he doesn't.
Right? Like, he's just talking and he's like, oh, he like swept. Basically, it was like a sucker punch, which he's not wrong. It was a cheap shot. Right? What Cory did was a cheap shot. It's like a sucker punch. What Banana said, it wasn't that crazy. But Nelson comes into the room and just starts yelling at them, right? Starts yelling at Bananas and starts talking shit. And this is where things begin to escalate. And you can see Cara and Natalie are kind of like, why are you in our room right now yelling? Like, no one was even talking to you. This was over. But then Nelson calls for backup.
Yes.
He calls for Devin. Hunter comes running in. Nelson does the classic, I'm going to yell at you because there's a security guy here, so I know the hold me back is coming. And then Hunter comes, so there's more hold me back. So this was all Nelson's plan, to be yelling and get Bananas amped up, knowing that the hold me back fight was coming,
it's
right?
like...
Am I reading this correctly?
I
what do
agree
you
with
think?
you completely, and I do put it on Nelson's head that he was creeping outside the room that's not his to hear what? Like, he wasn't going to learn anything that he hadn't already heard. Right? Like, he'd already heard...
It was also winding
down. The two parties, the two sides of the house had, like, retreated to their corners. Like, what is to be gained from listening in? Because you're only going to hear things that are going to piss you off. Right? And like, I think it was Cara was even saying, like, Nelson, you're in our room. We were about to go to sleep. Like, the hell, man.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
it was super ridiculous. And then things get even worse, right? Because Nelson's an idiot for sure. But then this is where I think Devin went too far. Because Devin then proceeds, like, he joins in and he's on Bananas' case as well. And he's talking about how Bananas hasn't talked to him since he got into the house. And he proceeds to follow Bananas around the entire complex, just chirping him, just talking shit to him. And Bananas is trying to walk away. And there's a producer there trying to defuse the situation. There's challenge security trying to defuse the situation. And it was interesting to me because when you see all these other people around, right? Like, you see the producers and you see security, that tells me that they're really drunk, and then production is really worried about what.
Yeah, they were prepared.
You know what I mean?
There was a security person between Cory and Tony. Basically, the second Tony hit the ground, like they were.
Right. It's
one of those. They were already waiting. Like, they've clearly been radioed ahead of the vans arriving, saying, like, things are getting heated.
Yeah. it's one of those things where, there are certain times where we watch the show and you can tell, like, okay, this moment is probably played up for TV. This is amplified, like this argument is phony. This wasn't one of those instances, right? Like, you could tell that Devin was really getting under Johnny Bananas' skin. So was Nelson, by the way. But this had the potential to blow up. And that's why the producer was trying to calm Bananas down, remove him from the situation. And when I say Bananas was walking around the entire complex, I'm not even exaggerating. No. And it's raining outside. And Devin is literally following him all over the place.
I had in my notes that I liked it at first, what Devin was doing.
Okay.
Because Devin really is Bananas' kryptonite. And Devin, when Devin came into the room and said, listen, you talk mad shit when I'm not in the house, but when I'm here, you've got nothing to say. I beat you, and I'm going to beat you again. You can't beat me in a competition. You can't beat me in a conversation. Fine. Like, I think that's fair game. But the problem is when he keeps following him around, that's not a great look.
See, here's where I disagree, right? All of those things are fine. All of those things might even be true, and that's cool, right? I get that you've been waiting for this moment to chirp Johnny Bananas. This is not the time, because you're just like, you're piggybacking. You're jumping on the wave of Nelson being stupid, right? You're jumping on the wave of Cory, who you're defending so hard, saying that he slipped, when, you end up now looking like an idiot, which I'm sure we'll get to for sure, right? But it's just all the wrong time. You know what I mean? And I think that was Devin's mistake. Like, I know that he's thinking, I've been waiting for this for a while. This is my opportunity. But I don't think it is, because I think it was just dumb. Like, at this moment, Nelson is just instigating. Nelson is being super annoying. And now you're joining in with Nelson. And I don't think you want to be on Nelson's side in this situation at this moment. If it was like the next day and you guys just got into it on your own, or you wanted to pick on Bananas on your own, cool. But you just jumped on the bandwagon that Nelson started. And I think if we're going to chirp Nelson for it and what he did, then Devin continuing, I'm talking before he's even following, Devin then continuing is just as bad as Nelson.
But what makes it even worse, the lowest blow, is that Bananas goes for the proverbial jugular and brings Devin's recently deceased dad into it and says, it's pathetic that you're here. Your dad just died. You should be home mourning. And basically says your dad would be ashamed of you right now. That is such a low blow.
And it is an incredibly low blow, right? And I was firmly on Johnny Bananas' side throughout this whole entire thing. And I thought, this is weird because I'm actually siding with Bananas. And then he said that, and I was like, okay, now you went too far. You went for the low blow. It was pathetic. If Devin were to punch you out right now and walk out cool, like, wouldn't even blame him for that. It's a low blow. It's unnecessary. It was like the worst possible thing he could say to him, right? And the worst possible thing you could bring up in that moment. And I'm going to give Devin credit for not snapping, and he probably didn't snap because I bet you he sobered up in that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, I bet you, like, he's so drunk and he's going and he's going and he's going, and in that moment he sobered up and he didn't even know how to respond. And that's why he didn't even get mad. He just sort of froze on the spot and said, oh, really? Like, that's where you're going to go? And I think, like, he just didn't know what to say. And did Bananas go too far? Here's my thing, John. No, you know what? I'll let you go first.
I mean, if I were in Devin's shoes, there's not enough security in that building to get me off Johnny Bananas. Like, I would...
And that's why I think he was drunk and sobered up. Because I think in a normal situation, your initial reaction is, it's like the Chris Paul Rondo fight. Like, someone spit in my face or, like, pointed in my face. Like, it's 10 times worse than that, right? So your only reaction is you're throwing a punch.
Yeah, like, it's not a, like, am I going to win this fight? It's going to be, you're going to know that you're in a fight by the time I'm done. Like, so, like, credit to Devin for remaining composed. it was, I mean, Bananas has had some low points on this show. This might be a new low point, I think.
It is a huge low point, and I don't want this to come off as if I'm defending Bananas, because I'm not defending Bananas. Bananas, did he go too far? Yes, he definitely did. But here's what I'll say. At the end of the day, Devin kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And at the end of the day, you don't get to get mad at someone else for how they react to you. There are repercussions to your actions. And so if you're following someone around, poking at them and trying to like make them mad and saying all these things, it's tough for you then to turn back around and be like, yo, you crossed the line. You can't say that to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, did Bananas cross the line? Of course he did. But I'm saying, we're saying that watching it. If you're like, as Devin, if I'm the person walking around instigating the bully, I then can't turn around and play victim when someone said something that went too far. Because maybe in Bananas' mind, you already said something that went too far, right? Like, the judge on that is going to be different because it's subjective. And I know it's easy to say, yes, well, obviously bringing up someone's dead father is crossing the line. And again, did Bananas go too far? Yes. Bananas is a jackass. And I'm not saying that he's not a jackass. But you can't go at an asshole and then get mad when that asshole acts like an asshole.
Yeah, but I mean, has Devin played the victim? I mean, he came at Johnny Bananas the next day, but he just like told him off for crossing the line. Like, I don't feel like Devin has played the victim at all. Like, he didn't guilt trip Cory. He the next morning confronted Bananas, but like, I don't think he crossed the line or anything like that. He was like, yo, that was fucked up and I'm not going to forget it, which is, I think, fair game.
Totally fair game. I just think, like, even people's opinion, and I haven't done a full, like, Twitter dive. Like, I saw a couple comments. I saw, like, Jemmy said that Bananas is a piece of shit or something along those lines for what he said to Devin. Totally true. And I totally understand. But people that listen to this podcast a lot will know that every once in a while I go on this rant where I talk about generational differences, right? And I talk about how this generation has grown up in a world in which you've never gotten punched in the face. And follow me for a second, right? When you've never been punched in the face, you don't understand repercussions to your actions. So you think that you can treat someone and act in a certain way towards someone without fear of being punched in the face. And so you think that you can follow someone around, yell at them when they're clearly trying to disengage. They're clearly trying to walk away from a situation. And you can keep instigating. And then while you're instigating, you then don't get to choose how that other person reacts, right? Like, it's fair game. Like, to me, it's fair game because you've pushed them to their brink. You don't get to decide what someone else's brink is in terms of when they lash out and do something that is fucked up. And I think that's what happened. Right. And I keep saying this all the time because I think that right now we're just in a place where people don't understand boundaries. Right. And hey, mind you, Bananas went way too far. I'm saying that. I'm agreeing with that. He went way too far. I'm just saying that Devin instigated it. And in the sense that, you know, obviously you don't deserve that, but you walked yourself into that. If I'm being honest, that's my opinion. I'm probably going to get crushed for this take, and that's fine. But I just feel like you could have squashed this situation, and you, instead of squashing it, you escalated it and kept going because to you I guess it was fun and games when Bananas didn't want to talk about it anymore.
I think, again, in defense of Devin, he's drunk. It's obviously a heightened emotional situation for all involved.
So's Bananas.
But Devin's also probably not in a great place in his life in general right now. And, like, I think the mentality is that you latch onto the situations you can control when you're feeling helpless in another part of your life. So what he can control? In his own words, he believes he can control Bananas. That he's so in...
But that's terrible. But that's terrible in itself, right? Because, again, you went and instigated a fight. You went into someone else's room to instigate a fight, and then you can't then turn, like, to me, you can't then turn around and get mad at someone else for crossing the line.
Well, but
that's just my opinion. And did Bananas go too far? Yes. But if I'm Devin, I can't be mad at Bananas at the end of the day because I instigated that whole thing.
I don't think he instigated all of it, right? Like,
he definitely instigated
no, but first of all, Nelson started it, really. Second of all, we haven't seen the full cut. Like, we don't know what Johnny Bananas said back before that. Like, yes, he was trying to disengage.
That part's true.
Yes, he's trying to disengage.
That part's true.
But, like, I'm sure Johnny Bananas' mouth was not shut the entire time. So we don't know.
Okay, I will give you that because we've heard from time to time from multiple sources that there are edits in which Johnny Bananas gets a different cut than everyone else. And, I will say in this episode, he was given a full confessional to which he was able to apologize for what he said. Did it come off as, real? No, it just seemed like something that he felt he should say.
He said that he probably crossed the line. He didn't even fully engage with, like, I said too much. And also...
But you know what I mean? Like, most people wouldn't be given that opportunity to have a 45-second to a minute straight apology in their confessional.
And...
Right? So I understand. The edit could be messed up to make Johnny Bananas look a lot better. Or, make Johnny Bananas look justified in some way in his actions. So I understand that. I will give you that.
Devin online as we speak. It's Tuesday night, saying that saying that he deserved it. And I wouldn't go so far as to say he deserved it. Like, I hear what you're saying, that he was elevating the mood by going after Bananas, but I don't think anyone deserves to have a recently deceased loved one spoken about like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Devin was instigating and was trying to get under Johnny's skin. But, like, Johnny, just as Cory escalated things by slamming Tony to the ground, Johnny escalated things. Frankly, everyone except Tony escalated things at some point in the storyline, right? Tony was just sort of being himself and, like, trying to make a joke of it. Didn't read things correctly, but he wasn't escalating, right? Like, he was trying to, like, joke with Cory and was cool about it. I also think what looked bad on Johnny was, yes, he got that lengthy chance to apologize in confessional, but that wasn't an apology to Devin directly. Right? We don't know when that was recorded.
Yeah.
And Devin confronts him the next morning, and Johnny's in bed, and Johnny basically asks security to get him out. And, like, Joss ends up coming between them and, like, moving Devin out of the room. That would have been a great time for Johnny to apologize. Like, that would that not have been a great moment for Johnny to sit up, say, hey, Devin, have a seat. You're right. I crossed the line last night, and I'm very sorry.
While you were talking, I was going through Twitter, and I saw this tweet from Devin that says, yo, stop blowing up my Twitter, dweebs. I'm trying to watch the Red Sox win the World Series.
I mean, it's game one, so early yet, but...
that's pretty funny. I thought
pretty funny. But yeah, like...
a crazy situation, but overall, like, I mean, I'd like to hear from the people, let us know what you think. Wherever you're listening to this, comment there or just tweet at us. And I want to actually have this conversation because I'm interested to know what people think about just this whole situation where, like, things aren't free game, right? Like, there's no boundaries anymore where we feel that, like, there's no lines. Like, we should know that there's certain things that you say to people, and when someone is not playing around with you anymore, you stop. Like, there's boundaries, right? And then you should know that I shouldn't say this to someone because there will be a reaction that I might not like.
I agree with you, but also I still think Devin is the wronged party here. Like, Johnny Bananas went way too far.
Undoubtedly. I'm not saying that he isn't the wronged party. Of course he's the wronged party, and Johnny Bananas, what he said is terrible. Not doubting that at all. I'm just saying you brought it on yourself. That's what I'm saying.
So Bananas apologizes in confessional, but I think you and I agree it's really not enough. both the content of what he said and the forum. Like, a proper apology is to the person you wronged. Like, face to face.
And we don't know if that happened. I don't think it happened because, I was going to jump too far ahead. But, I don't think that happened. But
it should be face to face. And even after the show is done, you get Devin's phone number, you get his email address. Like, you handle it off air as well. And I mean, we don't know what Bananas has done since the show is done filming, but certainly, like, Tony and Cory come back into the house separately from the hotel, and Cory basically immediately apologizes to Devin and is like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I fucked up, and, like, I'm sorry. And
do you think Cory knew what was going to happen at that point?
I think he knows. I think maybe they didn't tell him for sure what's going to happen, but they probably said something like, hey, make sure your shit's packed. You know? Like, I think the writing would have been on the wall. TJ almost instantly follows him into the house to discuss, the events of last night. And Cory and Devin get kicked off the show for Cory's lapse in judgment, to call it generously a lapse in judgment. But the drama doesn't stop there. So Cory and Tony hug, and they both say, like, hey man, there's no bad blood here. I was drunk, like, it was stupid, and I'm sorry. And Bananas gets up to hug Cory, and Cory refuses to hug Bananas and says, I'm not going to hug you after what you said to Devin last night. Which, hey, good for Cory. Fair game. Fair response. And then Cory sits down beside Devin. But Bananas kind of, like, makes a comment about, like, I forget what he said exactly, but, like, he smirked.
He smirked. And then someone says, I think it was Joss that says, why are you laughing?
Joss was immediately on him. And got up and was ready to fight. And Joss tweeted about all this and said,
he did.
Don't believe what you just see during the episode, or don't believe what you just see during the episode is only what happens. There's a lot behind the scenes. Devin's dad passed away, as had mine when I was younger. As well, my gran passed during filming, so this was a very sensitive topic for Johnny to abuse for the sake of quote-unquote TV drama. So
here's the thing. I don't think it's fair to say that Johnny just did this for TV drama when he was literally being followed around the house for however long. Like, I don't think he said that. In his mind, I don't think he said that for TV drama. I think he's thinking, how can I get this guy to stop because he's annoying the shit out of me? What's the lowest possible thing I can say to get this guy to off my back? That's what I think was happening. And trust me, in normal circumstances, I'm with Joss, and I'm saying, yo, Johnny Bananas is doing all of this just for TV. Like, he's making a spectacle out of it just for TV, and I would totally agree with you. But when he's walking away from the cameras and he's walking away from everything, I think it's unfair to say that he did this for TV drama.
Yeah, but I can also see why Joss, in that moment, was super pissed. And also, again, I mean, Joss kind of just confirmed what we were theorizing, that they cut out some things that Johnny said. So, like, sure, Devin was following him, but, like, who knows what Johnny was tossing back as that was going on.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we heard all of what Devin was saying, but this is a total guess, but I do assume that Johnny was firing back in some way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also found it interesting. I saw Tony on Twitter said he's grateful to walk away unscathed and happy that karma did its job. 2 years ago, this would have turned out completely different, but I know how much my family needs me to be a better person, not only on this show, but in real life.
Tony also acknowledged tonight on Twitter that when he's in the challenge house, he's on an alcohol limit and has a limited number of drinks that he's allowed to have because of previous incidents.
Yeah. Wow.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
We saw a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with the producers in this episode, including they're speaking to Devin again after they've been kicked out of the house. And he says, I don't know what to say. Like, he slipped, like, sticking to what he honestly believed. And then they're like, we can show you the footage. And he watches the footage, and you can see, he says, like, oh shit, he stuck his foot out. That was on purpose. And then, like, you just see, like, Devin's heart break. Right? Like,
well, he said it before, right? $1 million just got taken out of my hands over pasta.
$1 million pasta.
That is, yeah.
And I gotta say, I feel super bad for Devin, right? Like, he goes on the show.
For sure.
And his first day there, his dad dies. He flies back to the United States to bury his father, is in mourning, he's grieving. He decides to go back to compete in his dad's name. Gets his dad's name insulted. Maybe doesn't do his dad proud in that instance, but certainly his dad's memory is insulted by Johnny Bananas, and he gets kicked off the show. And really, aside from following Bananas around the house, did nothing wrong. And, like, that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of challenge misdemeanors. Following someone around the house and shouting at them, pretty low on the scale. Like, talk about a kick in the teeth. Like, talk about getting kicked when you're down. And finds out that, like, for all over pasta. Like, that's nuts.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think that, if you're Cory, you feel real bad, but because no one's going to feel bad for Cory in this instance. Because at the end of the day, Cory has to be one of the worst challenge competitors ever.
I'm pretty sure,
like, when we
1 or 2 episodes ago, I said the best thing that ever happened to Cory was that he missed the first 2/3 of the season. And, like,
yeah,
he pretty much confirmed what I was saying, like, instantly, by
no, it's true,
sabotaging himself and his partner with it. Like, they'd only been there for days.
Yeah,
right.
It's really crazy how, like, consistently, the Young Buck crew, whether it's Nelson, whether it's Cory, whether it's Hunter, they shoot themselves in the foot.
And this is one of the teams that you and I had tabbed them as arguably the forerunners to win it all. And with this early exit, it swings the balance of power even stronger to Johnny Bananas.
Oh, it's true.
Like,
Definitely
what
true.
A colossal
It's just
fuck
one
up.
of those things where, like, what is going on in your head? And normally it has something to do with the ladies, or, he had the season where he got eliminated early because he decided to tell everyone his game plan was to eliminate. Remember, he made the hit list? Right? And his hit list was, like, Bananas and then CT and then Derek, I think, was on his hit list.
Maybe Darrell. Was Darrell on that season? Certainly CT, Johnny, and Derek.
Yeah, and then they just proceeded to throw him in every week, I think for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I don't even know how long it was, but he was out super early, right? And it's just, dude, you gotta figure something out, man. Like, you gotta figure something out to be, like, to not just shoot yourself in the foot again.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing how bad Cory is at these sorts of things. And it's kind of sad to see, because they're kind of just life skills that he's fucking up on, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's screwing up in a competition. Like, he's not the best at puzzles, but he's not, like, a disaster. But it's like anger management, which I think, for example, Devin did a better job of showing anger management skills than Cory did. And like, don't tip your hand to your opponents. Like, there's so many things that he still has to learn about life.
Well, you think of some of the ways that Cory has eliminated himself, right? Like, we mentioned the hit. We obviously know what just happened with him and Devin, right? You go back to, what was it, Vendettas, and he makes a hit list by going at like the top dudes in the house, right? And is eliminated early in that game. You go back to Dirty 30, and if you remember Cory, that was a season where he had his alliance with his boys. It might have been Nelson. I can't remember who it was exactly. I think it was Nelson. But remember he flipped?
Yeah.
Or was it Thomas, maybe? It was someone he flipped on. Cory flipped on one of his friends, like outside of the house, and then that came back to get him because obviously nobody's going to trust him. Then just add in the fact that, you know, he was getting himself in trouble because he was bouncing around. I was going to just say who coined this term, and I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to say it because not because the person would be listening, but I don't want anyone who is listening who might know who this person is to connect the dots. But I'll say, because Cory he's a habitual ping ponger, meaning he's ping ponging between lanes, right? That got him in trouble on a couple seasons as well. Like, it's just a thing where, again, Cory's got to figure it out, and he's got to feel so bad because I don't know, this might be the worst, right? Like, remember that year when him and Nelson almost fought, right? So, like, as much as we're seeing Team Young Buck right now, like, him and Nelson pretty much almost fought in the middle of an elimination round, and so it's just so funny to see these guys continuously mess up. And if they're the new wave of the challenge, right? As Nelson keeps saying, he's like, they're not even getting put out or eliminated by the old guard. They're getting eliminated by themselves.
Yeah, Johnny and Tony did nothing to eliminate Cory and Devin.
Yeah, it's terrible. Just terrible. I feel bad for Devin, but I would feel much worse for Devin if the night didn't play out the way that it did. Again, I'm not saying he brought it on himself to be eliminated, because obviously he didn't give anyone a Russian leg sweep. But, yeah, that was bad. Just bad.
So then we have a dramatic shift in tone, which is hard to pull off, with Hit List, which is a classic trivia challenge. But if you get a question right, you can assign a strike to an opposing team of your choosing. Before we get to actually talking about all this, though, I have a couple of notes. The first is, as Pauly and Natalie are sort of like the first team to march onto the little riser that they have set up, Pauly kind of missteps and stays on the ground floor, and TJ's like, no, you got to get up on like the second one. And Johnny Bananas is right on him and is like, hey, man, no, you, like, what are you, new? And, like, he's doing it in a jocular manner. But the way people reacted, like, this is one of Johnny's problems, is, like, I think this is maybe, like, 2 hours after Cory and Devin just got sent home. And I don't think people want to hear Johnny Bananas be jocular in this moment. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people not reading the room. Well,
even as Devin and Cory were leaving, he's standing at the doorway waving at them saying, bye guys, have a safe flight. And it's like, yo man, just as I'm about to like defend you even a little bit, right? It's like you throw it back in my face and feel like gross for even thinking about coming close to defending you. You know what I'm saying? And so that scene, I think, when they're about to start this challenge, was Johnny Bananas showing his level of comfort is back. Right? Because the thing that I noticed when I was watching that, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, the teams are even. The sides of the house, like, there's a split right down the middle in terms of who's who in this house now, right? You have 3 teams on either side, so it's even going in. And it's all just because of Cory eliminating himself from the game.
But that said, like, even his allies, even Johnny Bananas' allies, have to be like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, just shut up. Like, it was an ugly incident all around.
But I think it's always like that, no? I think it's always like that. And also, I feel like he had an extra level of confidence, because if you really think about it, right? If he knows that, I mean, they kind of get the feeling this is going to be a trivia challenge, right? And if you look at how things are broken down, if I gave you odds on which side of the house was going to win? A trivia challenge. Are you going with Bananas and Tony, Cara and Marie, Natalie and Polly's side? Or are you going with Hunter and Ashley, Sylvia and Joss, or Nelson and Shane? Do you know what I mean? Like, which side of the house are you riding with there? Because to me, it was pretty obvious that Natalie, Polly, Cara, Marie, or Bananas and Tony were going to win.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, let's get to that, because they made a mistake. They could have won even more easily.
So, yes, this is kind of interesting, right? So, they're way up there. And one thing I want to touch on first was just the fact of, like, I wanted to give Marie a huge hug. Not just because she came on the podcast last week, which shout out Marie for coming on the podcast, because it was a lot of fun. We got a lot of good feedback about it too, and the love is real. But the way that her and Cara both walked out, and they were so scared, and she was like just having flashbacks of the last time she was in a challenge that involved being on top of a platform above water, and she was super nervous and fell, and she had bruises all over her body. Like, the look on her face of just sheer fear, right? Like, it was like, you just wanted to give her a big hug. So I was just happy that, they kind of got over it, and, give Bananas a little credit. Bananas, like, kind of was like, hey, relax, calm down. Like, look at me. Look at me. Like, it's okay. You're okay. You're going to be fine. Right? And I thought that was cool.
I was cool. I liked Johnny Bananas in that moment. I felt bad for Marie. There was one moment where, when Tony gets eliminated, TJ calls down to him and says, "How was that, Tony?" And Tony is like, "Not so bad." And TJ looks at Marie and goes, "See, it wasn't that bad." And the look on Marie's face was priceless. Like, Marie is the queen of, like, great expressions. But that was...
like, she could have just a full catalog of GIFs made up.
And that was one of the best. So sure. Early on, Joss and Sylvia are the first team to get eliminated, because basically the Bananas squad picks on them, which is smart, because Sylvia is probably going to be the best at trivia.
Yes.
Right?
Facts.
But,
yeah. There's a clear strategy,
and then,
which is smart.
But as Joss and Sylvia get eliminated, Tony kind of, like, shuffles or something and knocks Bananas off. So then Tony is on his own, which is perhaps not the best person to be working on his own. But we should say, before Joss and Sylvia got eliminated, they didn't even have a chance to answer a question. Like, they were gone that fast. But then Shane eliminates Tony again by getting an answer correctly and throwing his strike against, well, now Tony alone. So that's when Tony gets booted off. One of the best questions is, TJ asks, among Brad, Tony, Cory, Devin, I think that's all of them, how many children do they knowingly have between them?
See, I thought that the way that it was phrased, it was Cory was last, and the knowingly was aimed at Cory.
I think it was aimed at...
That's how I
think it was aimed at Cory, but Tony also was like, knowingly, that could be me.
Crazy. Yes, that was a great question. I have
to criticize Cara Maria and Marie, because they got it correct. But they decided to put that strike not on Hunter and Ashley. Hunter and Ashley had 2 strikes at that point, and if they had put it on Hunter and Ashley, it would have eliminated Hunter and Ashley. It meant that it was Cara Maria and Marie, Polly and Natalie versus Shane and Nelson. And Shane and Nelson would not be able to climb back
I
from
thought
that.
this through, though. See, I thought so too, right? And then it happened again. And what they were actually doing was they're banking on the fact that Hunter and Ashley were going to get one wrong. So you're betting on that fact that they're eventually going to get one wrong, which could eliminate themselves, but you're now taking that X and putting it on the other team so that even if you were to eliminate Hunter and Ashley, now you got to go at you got to go at Shane and Nelson, but they have no X's. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So you're banking on Shane and Nelson getting one wrong or Hunter and Ashley getting one wrong and you not having to go at that team and they have no X's, right? It was a numbers game. It was like a math game. because I thought so too. And then I thought about it. I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. And I mean, hey, it almost worked because Hunter and Ashley were struggling to spell Armageddon.
And hey, shout out to Hunter for spelling Armageddon correctly, because that's not easy. That's a tough word.
See, it is a tough. Okay, I mean, yes, I will give you that.
You were gonna say it's
because I will.
They should know because they see signs with it every 3 days.
No, I was gonna say they should just know how to spell, but at the same time, I'm way too reliant on spell check. Like, I will purposely spell things wrong knowing that the computer will spell it for me, or my text messaging will spell it for me, you know what I mean? So I totally cannot call someone else out for being a bad speller.
You could probably guess, but I was spelling the words out loud by myself before. Like, when TJ would be like,
I'm sure a lot of people
spell Armageddon, and I was just like shouting it. Nothing gets me more hyped than a trivia show like that. Like, I can't watch Family Feud and not get rowdy. I just get too worked up, Sheldon.
No, for sure. For sure.
So,
no, I thought it was interesting because, again, so Cara and Marie, they split up their acts, and then when Paulie and Natalie did it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I get it. They're splitting it and betting that they're going to get the questions wrong, which ended up happening. And at the end of the day, it ended up being Cara and Marie against Natalie and Paulie. Natalie and Paulie get the win on a great question, which, like, obviously, I don't know if it was planned out, right? Because obviously they have a bunch of questions. And, I mean, all it would take would be a producer telling TJ, like, hey, move up this question so that Marie would get eliminated on the question about who threw pizza on Brad and Brittany. And it was obviously
she did not
Marie.
Throw the pizza.
And it was
she
funny.
Delivered the pizza.
Well played. Fair enough. And it was just funny, you know. TJ yelling, "That's for Brad!" Like, I thought that was funny.
It was good. So
yeah, Paulie and Natalie from Redemption House to Champs.
Which, like, good for them, but I do not like that they lost 2 competitions and are still in this thing and now have a power vote. Like, I don't... We say this every episode, but crazy. I don't like this. I think... And, like, Sylvia was crying, and, like, I think the tears are too strong, but I also understand her frustration.
Yeah. No, it is a crazy change in fortunes in terms of, like, how this all played out, in terms of them having so many chances to stay in the game, and then now they're back in the house after being away for like a month, not having to deal with any of the politics or any of the drama. And don't get me wrong, they earned their way back in. Natalie has a battle scars to prove it, but it's still kind of like, really? So, yeah.
So, for you, what was the line of the episode?
The line of the episode, and it's funny because a couple weeks ago I gave the line of the episode to TJ, and I'm going to give it to TJ again because it was at the very beginning of the episode when all the teams are lined up and he's discussing, you know, Natalie, that was a great job. You and Paulie are back in the house. And, you know, congratulations as well to Marie and Cara. You guys are back. And he says, cigarettes and sadness to happiness, and let's do this. I was like, did he come up with that bar on the spot?
I think so.
Do you know what I mean? TJ dropping bars? Okay. I'm here for that. TJ, I'll give you that line of the episode.
For me, it was Devin's, I can't believe I lost $1 million because of pasta. Because it summed it all up.
Definitely.
And just, like, the frustration and how ridiculous it all was and how it all spiraled out of control. It really, like, summed it all, and, like, the dejected look on his face, it really summed it all up. I think this week, though, it's going to be super tough to ask this, but who killed it for you this week, Sheldon?
So I know who killed it is normally, like, our MVP of the episode, but I think it's only fitting that we go LVP for the episode. And, you know, who didn't kill it? Cory, you killed yourself. So maybe you didn't kill it, but you killed yourself.
Yeah.
The LVP of this episode. I mean, again, you're barely in the house. The fact that's why I was so keen on mentioning early on when him and Devin were having that conversation about, hey, we got to figure out kind of who's who in this house and what's going on. But bottom line, we got to lay low. And then he proceeded to do the opposite. And I know that they could have taken that soundbite from, 3 days prior or whatever and make it seem like it was that morning, right? But I think the point remains that, come on, man, like you shot yourself in the foot. You cost Devin money over pasta, but, if you're Cory and you're talking about, you're here for your kid and it changed you and has you focus and you're here to try to win money for your kid, and then that's how you go out, bruh. That's all I got for you.
I strongly co-sign that he is the LVP. But I will say, I really liked Joss in this episode. And I mean,
okay.
Johnny Bananas chirped him and said, now you say something. Like, you've been quiet all season. And, like, now you decide to chime in. But you know what? And, like, I know...
Which is accurate.
But that's a credit to Joss that he has stayed out of the drama and really only stepped into the drama when things got too real. Like, we have praised in the past Zach and Amanda for remaining loyal and sticking to their guns. And, credit for Joss for showing, like, a moral backbone and be like, hey, that was too far. But also, like, sticking to his guns, but it not costing him. Right? Like, he said he was tempted to smash Johnny's face in, but he didn't. And he sat back down and, continues to conduct himself well. And we'll obviously see how it pans out. I honestly don't know who is going to win this season, but are Joss and Sylvia starting to nose ahead as front runners?
I don't know, man. I think there's just going to be another major twist and turn, and like it's the longer we go along in this season, you realize that the twists of what the eliminations are going to be, the twists of what the challenge are going to be, are so crazy that it's so hard to say who's the favorite on a week to week basis, right? It's so crazy. So, I don't know. I literally have no idea who's going to win.
Yeah.
Look, Natalie's crying pretty much at the end of this episode because she can't believe the change of fortunes they just had, right?
I think that what's really, let's look at it the other way. The most hated team is Johnny and Tony. And really the most hated team is Johnny, and Tony is just shackled to him. Then the most hated team is probably Shane and Nelson. Right?
Okay.
So those two kind of cancel each other out. We don't know who's coming back from the Redemption House, but I feel like after those two teams, which are definitely the least popular and like going to draw the most fire, right? Like the most likely to get voted in, I think Paulie and Natalie are next in line as most disliked because of Paulie spouting off.
Yeah, or Hunter
and Ashley. But Cara and Marie and Joss and Sylvia are like towards the most popular or perhaps least hated, depending on how you want to frame it. So, and like at this stage, that's certainly a benefit. I mean, Sylvia's was dead right earlier in this episode where she said, we just have to lay low. And like, I know he sped off for a moment there, but Joss is very good at laying low, and I think Sylvia is too. Shane and Johnny are the worst at laying low. So,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, like, what happens in the coming weeks for sure. But at this point, like, it's a toss-up. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm interested to see, and I can't wait for next week's episode.
Yeah. I think that's all we have. That flew by.
Yeah, there was a lot there. I mean, it was a great episode. It was really cool. I mean, maybe, I just think that things are going well on this season right now. I was worried about it early, obviously, as we discussed, but it's been getting better and better. And again, for an episode that only had a challenge at the very end, right? Like there was enough stuff going on that gave us talking points, and there was a lot of drama. And again, I want to hear what the people think of this whole Johnny Devin thing. And obviously, because we just watched the episode basically live and then recorded, I didn't get a really good chance to like deep dive and see what the people were saying. So for sure, hit us up and we'll go over that stuff.
I will say,
week.
I found the scene with Johnny and Devin, I found that very hard to watch. Like, I found it upsetting. But it was awkward and upsetting, but it's still compelling TV.
Another question I have for not only you, but for other people listening to this podcast, as the challenge ended, like on my PVR when I record like 5 minutes after, like it's just a standard that I do on everything I PVR. And so the trailer for X on the Beach came on after. Does anyone watch this show? Like, I want to know, like, if people enjoy the show, because, like, this trailer just looks completely ridiculous, right? And, like, I get it. Like, there's a bunch of attractive women on this show, so I understand why one might want to continue to watch the show. And if you were a female, they're attractive dudes, so I see why a female would also want to watch said show. So I get it from that angle, but it just looks super ridiculous what is going on this show, and I wonder if anyone watches it, and I want to hear if they like it.
I gotta tell you, I don't find the people on that show very attractive.
That's fair. I'm seeing some of the women right now, and I will disagree, but that's fair.
I mean, agree to disagree. That's fine.
That's allowed.
Yeah, they're not doing it for me.
I mean, not everyone can be Natalie, right? So
let's just put it this way: I like natural beauty, and I'm not sure that that's the show to see that.
That is a great observation.
Just saying. Where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. And shout out to the people watching the videos online. We got the video of our interview with Marie from last week. So if you haven't checked that out yet, either check out the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud, or go to YouTube and search the You Killed It MTV Challenge podcast and watch the video there.
Do you have any other podcasts, Sheldon?
I do have a bunch of other podcasts. If you happen to be a fan of basketball, we do two other podcasts. One would be a NBA wide. We discuss all the fun topics of the NBA. It's not breaking down basketball and stuff. We're talking about NBA social media. I mean, obviously this week we'd be talking about guys spitting in people's faces and then getting punched in the face. We talk about that. Then there's another podcast that is very Toronto-centric, as it is a Raptors post-game show, where after each and every Toronto Raptor game, we go live on Twitter to break things down and discuss the inner workings of the team, also known as We the North. So, there's that. And did happen to have some weird dude on, because I was scraping the bottom of the barrel for a guest, and I couldn't really find anyone. So I ended up getting this guy who I know from another podcast I do, and had him.
Yeah,
on.
He did all right.
He
knows a thing or two about basketball. It was okay. And you can find me on social media on both Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. And as per usual, my social media warning is I will be covering the Toronto Raptors tomorrow. That's Wednesday evening, because homegrown talent Andrew Wiggins is in town, so I'm going to be following him around as long as he's not too injured. So brace yourself for some basketball tweets, I guess, from both of us. That's going to be happening.
Yeah, I got a lot of basketball tweets. I'm sorry, people, but it's just what it is. I'll try to mix in some basketball jokes.
Until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.